How to sew elastic waist shirts with side seam pockets and slits. A beginner-friendly step-by-step sewing tutorial. Hi, I'm Anna. I explain slowly so anyone can do it. Now let's put the pages together. Start with the first row. Glue page A1 to A2. I cut off the left edge of sheet A2 and match the pattern pieces so they join neatly. Now do the same things for the rest of the pages in the first row. Move on to the second row, pages B1 and B2. Now I also trim the top margin of the page, so I can join rows together. Keep going like this until all the pages of your pattern are joined together. This pattern is quite small, so it's easy to cut the pieces right away. Once all the pieces are ready, let's cut the notches. I like to snip small triangle shapes with the tips of my scissors. It makes it easier to transfer the marks onto the fabric later. Here is what we need to sew the shirts. Fabric up to 1 meter, depending on your size. Then fusible interfacing about 40 cm. Elastic 3 cm wide. I have a 2 meter pack. A safety pin to help us insert the elastic in. A universal sewing needle size 70 or 80, scissors, pins and some tailor's chalk. Thread that matches your fabric. If you are finishing the edges with a zigzag stitch, you'll need just 1 spool. If you are using a serger, you'll need 3 more. And of course, your printed shirts pattern. Let's get the fabric ready for cutting. I pre-washed mine at 30 degrees. Just to make sure it doesn't shrink later. Now fold the fabric in half with the right side together, match the selvage edges, then lay out your pattern pieces. You can find the layout diagram in the sewing instructions. The fold mark on the waistband should line up with the fabric fold. Make sure the Grainline mark is parallel to the fabric fold or the selvage. Now a quick note about the pockets. We need 4 pocket pieces in total, so you'll need to trace the pocket pattern twice on the fabric. I am placing 1 pocket piece at the top and the second one down below. To stop the pattern pieces from shifting, place something a bit heavy on top. I'm using books. Then pin the pieces to the fabric carefully. Now you can trace around them with tailor's chalk without worrying they'll move. This is especially helpful when working with soft or slippery fabrics. Everything looks great. Now we can cut out the pieces along the chalk lines. The final little step. Let's transfer the notches onto the fabric. I do this with just the tips of my scissors, making a tiny 3 mm snip. That's all you need, just enough to make the spot. Don't forget to mark the notches on the pockets. And let's also mark the center of the waistband. Make the wrong side of each piece with chalk, so you don't mix them up later while sewing. Take both inner pockets pieces and place them on the ironing board, wrong side up. Now grab your fusible stay tape, fill it with your fingers. The raw side is the glue. Place the tape along the outer edge of the pocket, glue side down. Press the tape with your iron. Don't slide it, just lift and press, moving the iron from one spot to another until the tape sticks completely. Take the front piece of your shirt and place it right side up. Find the notches that mark the pocket opening. Now place the pocket piece right side together with the front piece. First, match the notches and pin them. Then line up the edges and add more pins to keep everything in place. Sew between the pocket opening marks. That means from the first pin to the last pin. Use a straight stitch 1 cm from the edge. And now let's agree on this, unless I say otherwise, all seams are 1 cm from the edge. Repeat the same steps on the second front piece. It's easier to do both at once. Now the next step. Locate the pocket marks and snip right into them. But don't go all the way through. Stop about 1 to 2 millimeters before the stitching. Okay, now press the seam flat. Turn the pieces wrong side up. That's the side with the chalk marks. Then press the seam allowance between the snips towards the pocket. Now I'm going to stitch the seam allowance to the pocket lining. To do that, I move my needle 1 or 2 steps to the right. This way, the center of the presser foot lines up with the original seam. And my new stitch will land just 1 to 2 millimeters next to it. And don't forget to backstitch at the beginning and end of the seam. If your machine can't move the needle, don't give up here. Just try to sew a line about 2 millimeters from the seam. And if it's really not working, don't stress. You can skip these steps for now and try it again next time. Here is another little helper, a presser foot with a guide. Place the guide right in the seam, shift the needle and enjoy a nice straight stitch. Okay, we did it. Now trim the loose threads, flip the pocket to the wrong side, smooth out the seam allowances and press everything flat. Now we are going to make a top stitch. First, mark the beginning and end of the pocket opening with the pins. And then pin the pocket back to the front piece. Sew a straight line between the first and last pins. I'm stitching at the width of my presser foot. I just like how it looks. Press the seam, then turn the pieces wrong side up. Then take the outer pocket piece and place it right side together with the inner pocket piece. Start by matching the pocket opening notches again. Then pin the pocket pieces together all the way around. At the pocket opening notches, sew short horizontal stitches, about 3 or 4. And don't forget to backstitch. Okay, good job! Now it's time to sew the pocket backs together. Just follow the curve all the way around. Let's finish this edge. You can use a zigzag stitch, set the width to 2 or 3 millimeters and the length to 2.5 millimeters. If your fabric doesn't fray much, keep the edge a little inside the foot. Here is what the edge looks like. Now option 2, using a serger like me. Just run the edge through your overlocker and you're done. Give the pockets a good press. Now we'll secure the top of the pocket to the front of the shots. Just sew a short line across the top edge. This will keep everything in place. Now side seams. Place the back piece on top of the front, right side together. Line up the side edges. First match the notches and then pin along the entire side seam. Now let's match and pin the inseams. After, sew along the inseam all the way down. Don't forget to backstitch at the beginning and end. On the side seam, sew above and below the slit marks. Leave the slit itself open, we'll finish it later. important step. Make sure not to accidentally stitch the pocket opening closed. I like to slide my hand between the layers and gently push the pocket out all the way while sewing. Let's finish the seam allowances. Start with the side seams. Finish them only up to the top slip marking, with the front piece on top. Next, finish the inseam allowance completely, this time with the back piece on top. Let's take another look. We are leaving the slit unfinished for now. If the slit seems tricky, just skip it. Sew and finish the side seam all the way instead. Then, give all the seams a good press. Press the inseam seam allowance toward the front and the side seam allowance towards the back. If you don't have a tailor's hem or pressing block like this, just slide your shot onto the curved edge of your ironing board. That works great too. Now we've got two separate legs. Turn one leg right side out. Then slide this leg into the other one, so they are right side together. Then match the inseams. Spread the seam allowances in opposite directions and pin. Next, find the notches and match them up. And then align and pin the entire crotch seam. Now let's sew the crotch seam on the sewing machine. Notice how I place the pieces under the presser foot. I'm sewing with the inside leg seam on the top. I find it easier this way. And of course, don't forget the backstitch at the beginning and end. Now let's finish the seam allowances together. I'm using an overlocker with the inside leg facing up. Next, press the seam flat, then spread out the shirts, slide them onto the ironing board and press the seam allowance toward the leg that used to be the outer one. Look, it's so big! The right time to add the waistband. Fold the waistband in half right side together, aligning the shirt edges and pin. Machine stitch, back stitching at the beginning and end of the seam. Press the seam flat, then press the seam allowances open. Fold the waistband in half lengthwise, wrong side together. Align the edges and match the notches and press. Here's the edge that will be on the inside of the shirts, either with an overlocker or a zigzag stitch. And now I'll show you how to finish a circular seam on the overlocker. When I get close to where I started, I leave the knife so I don't accidentally cut the stitches, and keep sewing a little further, overlapping the first stitches. And then I undo the overlock tail and tie a couple of knots. This is my favorite way to finish it. And the question, how do you usually hide your overlock tails? Now we are going to attach the waistband to the shirts. On the waistband we have two marks, a notch in the center and the seam. First, place the waistband inside the shirts, right side together. Then match the seam on the waistband with the crotch seam on the back. And after that, the notch, the center notch, with the crotch seam on the front. Next, evenly distribute the waistband inside the shirts and pin it in place. Machine stitch the waistband, backstitching at the beginning and end of the seam. Trim off any loose threads. Press the seam flat. Then press the seam allowance up towards the waistband. Try not to press over the fold line of the waistband. Believe me, you don't want it to disappear. Fold the waistband in half again, so the finished edge covers the seam where we attach it. Pin it in place. To make sure everything is neat and even, I recommended basting the waistband by hand. I'm basting the waistband just below the seam where it's attached. Now let's measure the elastic. Wrap it around your waist and find a length that feels comfortable for you. The main rule, it should feel snug but not tight, and not too loose so it slips down. And add about 2 cm, 1 inch for overlap. Mark it with chalk and cut. Leave a small opening about 5 cm, 2 inches. Next we'll sew the waistband on the sewing machine. Place your shirts with the right side facing you and stitch right along the waistband seam. Take your time here and don't worry if the stitching isn't perfect on the first try. The waistband will be gathered, so the seam will hardly be visible. Don't forget to leave an opening for the elastic. After, remove the basting stitches and press the waistband. Now take your elastic and safety pin. Attach the safety pin to one end of the elastic and thread it through the opening in the waistband. Make sure the elastic doesn't twist inside. Pull out both ends of the elastic and check again that it's not twisted. Overlap the ends and pin them together. Then sew a few vertical lines on your machine to join them, making sure to backstitch. Okay, now close the opening in the waistband, pin it and stitch it on the machine. Again, remembering to backstitch. It's very important to spread the elastic evenly inside the waistband. To do this, give the waistband a few good stretches in the different directions. Oh my god, I look very serious at this stage. When you see that the gathers are evenly spread, pin the waistband in several places. The less sewing experience you have, the more pins you should use. Top stitch the waistband. This gives it a cleaner look and helps keep the elastic from twisting after washing. Start from the back of the shorts, with the waistband right side facing you. Align its edge with the edge of the pressure foot. Stitch while stretching the waistband with your hands from pin to pin. On the first row, don't remove the pins as you sew. Instead, slow down as you approach each pin and carefully stitch over it. Okay, now the second line. Align the left edge of the pressure foot with the waistband seam. Gently straight the waistband as you sew, and stitch all the way around until you reach your starting point. Trim any loose threads and give the waistband a good press. If you have a label, now is a great time to sew it on. Okay, let's move on to the last step, hemming your shirts. Trim off the overlock tail if you haven't already. Then fold the hem of your shirts up by 1 cm and press. I like to place a ruler along the edge and pin the allowance directly to the ironing board. This helps keep the fold perfectly even. Find the part of the side seam you left unstitched. That's your slit. Straighten the seam allowances. Fold each side of the slit neatly in half along the seam and align the side seams. Pin everything in place to keep it secure. Now stitch each side of the slit separately, stopping exactly where the side seam joins the hem. To make sure you don't overshoot or stop too early, mark the exact point with a pin before sewing. Stitch one side of the slit first, then the other. After sewing, trim the seam allowance corners and turn the hem right side out. If you see puckering where the slit starts, it usually means one side was stitched a bit longer than the other. Simply unpick the extra stitches to fix it. Press the seam, unfold the hem and carefully trim the seam allowance corners. This will reduce bulk and help the hem lie flat when you turn it back. Then make a small clip in the side seam allowance, exactly at the beginning of the slit. Fold the seam allowance back into place, press it neatly so the edge is crisp, and secure it with a pin to hold it while you continue sewing. Fold the entire bottom edge of your shorts up by 3 cm. Press it flat and pin it in place to prepare for the final hem stitching. Next, bait the hem by hand, keeping your stitches close to the top fold. This will help hold the hem securely in place and make your final machine stitches neater. The final step is the top stitching. Stitch on the right side of the shirts, following your basting as a guide. Keep a consistent distance from the hem, about 2.8 centimeters. Press the seam, then give your shirts a final press all over, so they look crisp and polished. Hey, and that's it! Your shirts are finished! You did an amazing job and I'm so proud of you! So, what's your next project? A dress or a blouse?